I knew the second he opened his mouth that the entire evening was about to blow up. My sister's fiancé, Brandon Clark, sat at the head of my parents' dining table like he was auditioning to claim the title of family patriarch. He raised his wine glass, flashed a smug grin, and announced loudly enough for every utensil to freeze mid-bite, "Ava still has no idea what she wants to do with her life. But hey, some people peak late. Or not at all." They all burst out laughing. My mother giggled. My father let out a pleased little chuckle. Even my sister tried to hide her smirk behind her perfectly manicured fingers. Every single person laughed. Except me. I didn't argue. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't even breathe differently. Instead, I reached calmly into my purse and set my phone down on the table, screen face down. Slow, intentional. Brandon's smile slipped. He thought he had me pegged as the quiet one, the harmless one. He had no clue what I came prepared with tonight. There's one thing you need to know about my family. We don't do truth. Only appearances. My mother, Linda Mitchell, has built her entire existence on the illusion of perfection. Immaculate home, magazine-worthy decor, exemplary children, even while reality festered underneath. My father, Charles, barely speaks. He simply nods along with whichever opinion sounds most convincing. And then there's my sister, Emily, the chosen one. Former beauty queen, flawless on Instagram, the daughter moms brag about to strangers in grocery stores. Growing up, if Emily sneezed, Mom called it so graceful. If I sneezed, Mom asked if I was trying to draw attention to myself. So when Emily's marriage crashed last year, Mom was in freefall. Until Brandon showed up. Tall, polished, looks like money, talks about stocks like he single-handedly built the economy. And instantly, my parents worshipped him because he matched the image they were desperate to protect. Me. I've always been the crack in their perfect picture. That's why when my mother texted, Sunday dinner, 7 p.m., be here, I knew I wasn't invited. I was being summoned. A prop, not a person. But tonight, for once, I didn't show up unarmed. The moment I stepped inside the house, I felt it. An invisible shift. Not warmth. Not welcome. More like stepping onto a stage without a script they expected me to follow. Mom greeted me with a tense smile. "Ava, darling, you're late." I glanced at the clock. 6:58 p.m. 2 minutes early. But with my mother, time isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in compliance. "I'm right on time," I said. She didn't reply. She simply turned and drifted toward the dining room. Like a queen quietly disappointed. The table looked like it belonged to a wedding rehearsal dinner. White candles, gold-rimmed plates, wine already poured. And there he was, Brandon leaning back in his chair, one arm draped over Emily's seat as if it were his throne. He glanced at me and smirked. "Ava, you made it," he said. "Thought you might skip out. Busy night chasing your dreams." "Huh." Emily chuckled softly. I slid into my chair without a word. Conversation started around me. Weather, work, gossip, a cousin's baby. But I couldn't stop watching Brandon. Every movement, every gesture was calculated. Every joke polished, every laugh slightly too loud. Then he zeroed in on his favorite subject, himself. "So my firm is launching a new fund," he boomed. "A real game changer. Not that someone like Ava would get much of the real finance world." Mom laughed a little too hard. Dad bobbed his head like a wind-up toy. Emily reached for Brandon's arm, whispering, "Stop," while her smile clearly said, "Keep going." I continued eating, but a cold knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't casual teasing. This was orchestrated. They expected me to play the fool. Not tonight. I should have known Brandon wouldn't stop at one dig. Men like him don't throw a single stone. They unleash avalanches. He jabbed a piece of roast beef with his fork and fixed me with a pointed look. "You know, Ava, I actually met a guy at work just like you." I raised a brow. "Just like me?" "Oh yeah." Brandon leaned back, theatrically. Super smart, super introverted. Always talking about his side projects. He made air quotes like before. Emily giggled. He built some little app in his bedroom. "Sold what?" 7 copies. He paused, pretending to ponder deeply. Said he was an entrepreneur. Mom pressed a hand to her chest, laughing too hard. "Ah, that's adorable." I swallowed hard, not from the insult, but from how much they were enjoying it. Brandon wasn't teasing. He was dissecting me, testing just how small he could make me feel. Then he leaned forward, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. Honestly, Ava, maybe you should consider teaching coding to high schoolers. Stable job, easy hours. Perfect for people who can't land a position at an actual tech company. The table went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in laughter. Emily dabbed at a fake tear. Dad chuckled into his napkin. Mom sipped her wine, clearly pleased. I stared at Brandon, not blinking, not flinching. He waited, eyes sharp, expecting me to crack. Men like him thrived on that. They lived for it. Mom finally intervened. But not for me. Ava, sweetheart, she said in that disappointed, teacherly tone. You have to let people tease you. It's how we connect. Something icy coiled in my chest. Connect. This was their idea of connection. Dad jumped in too. Brandon's just joking. Don't be so sensitive. Emily's smile never wavered. Come on, Ava. It's funny. There it was. The same old script. The story I'd been forced to follow my whole life. I wasn't allowed to hurt. I wasn't allowed to fight back. I was meant to fade into the background, quiet and harmless. My throat constricted. Childhood memories crashed over me. Getting blamed for Emily's tantrums, scolded for outshining others, told to stay small, quiet, invisible. Brandon's smirk widened. He thought he'd won. He had no clue. I was ready. Dessert arrived. Store-bought cheesecake. Mom pretended she'd baked it. Wine glasses were topped off. Everyone loosened up, and that meant only one thing. Brandon felt bolder. He wiped his mouth with exaggerated flair, then jabbed a fork toward me. Ava, be honest, he said. Do you ever look at Emily and feel jealous? Emily choked on her wine. Mom's eyes lit with that messy excitement she always pretended to hate. Dad cleared his throat, but didn't intervene. I froze. Brandon leaned in, smirk fixed. I mean, look at her, he said, motioning toward Emily like she was a trophy on display. Successful, beautiful, engaged, and you? Well, he let the pause hang, thick with insult. Emily muttered, Brandon, seriously, but her lips were still curved in that knowing smile. I drew in a slow, steady breath. Brandon leaned closer, elbows on the table. I'm just saying, he continued, some people in this family made it. Some are still figuring themselves out. Nothing wrong with being a late bloomer. My jaw tightened. Then he laughed. Loud, sharp, echoing. Or, a never bloomer. That was it. That line. The instant the dinner shifted from uncomfortable to unforgivable, Mom placed her hand over his. Oh, Brandon, stop, she said. But her face practically glowed with pride. Dad chuckled softly. Emily hid behind her napkin. And all of them gave me the same look. Don't react. Don't ruin the show. Don't break the illusion that I set my fork down gently. The metallic click soft but deliberate. Brandon, I said quietly. He grinned, thinking victory was his. Yes, Ava. I tilted my head. Are you sure you want to keep going? His smile flickered, just a little, but I saw it. Mom hissed. Ava, don't start. Start. I wasn't starting anything. Not yet. Brandon scoffed. Relax. It's all in good fun. Unless you're feeling sensitive again. My gaze stayed locked on his. Calm, steady, unwavering. He thought I was faltering. He thought I was trapped. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd spent the entire week digging into his life. The truth I'd uncovered was right there in my phone, like a weapon loaded and ready. Tonight wouldn't end the way he expected. The air in the room shifted. Heavy, electric, waiting. Brandon didn't sense it. Men like him never do. Until it's too late. He reached for his wine. So, Ava, he said casually, what exactly do you do all day besides bottle your feelings? Soft laughter rippled around the table. That was when I smiled. A real smile. Calm, precise, final. Slowly, deliberately, I slid my phone from my purse onto the table. The screen lay face down, right next to Brandon's wine glass. His laughter froze midair. Emily frowned sharply. Ava, what are you doing? I didn't respond. Instead, I tapped the screen, waking it. Brandon's eyes caught the faint glow. And that was when the color vanished from his face. The first notification didn't bother to hide itself. Front and center across the top banner, bold and undeniable. Prime text investigation file uploaded. A direct hit. Brandon swallowed. Where did you get that? I lifted the phone, tilting it toward the table, and opened a folder labeled Brandon Clark. Evidence. My mother gasped like I'd drawn a weapon. Ava, what is that? I kept my tone calm. It was a full timeline of Brandon's last year. Money he borrowed under the table, the failed crypto platform he sold as a guaranteed investment, the shell company he'd registered in Nevada. Dad blinked. Nevada? Why Nevada? Emily murmured. Brandon, is she lying? Brandon shot up. This is ridiculous. I didn't flinch. Sit down, I said. And to everyone's shock, he did. Maybe it was my tone. Maybe it was the sudden realization that I wasn't the girl he could just step over. I swiped to the first image, a screenshot of Brandon on a Zoom call, promising investors a 25% monthly return. Illegal on every level. His own voice blared from the speakers, guaranteed. Absolutely risk-free. Mom clutched her mouth. Oh my God. Emily slammed her hand on the table. Brandon, what is this? He stammered. It's taken out of context. I clicked the next file. Bank transfers, dates, amounts. Each one pointing to the same shell company. A perfect trail. Context. I said quietly, like the $18,000 you took from your coworker, promising to double it. Or the $12,500 from your gym friend. Emily's face crumpled. You told me you needed that money for a business trip, she yelled. Brandon's breathing grew rapid. Listen, I can explain. No, I cut him off. You can't. For the first time all night, silence fell. Real silence. Mom whispered. Ava, why didn't you tell us? I looked at her. Because finally, you wanted answers from me. Because you wouldn't have listened, I said. Dad looked away, ashamed. Emily was crying silently. Brandon slammed his fist on the table, shattering the quiet. You had no right digging into my life. I rose slowly. And you had no right stepping into my family, pretending to be someone you're not. He bared his teeth. You think you ruined me? You think you're some kind of hero? I leaned in. No, Brandon. I think you ruined yourself. Emily whispered my name, voice trembling. Ava, thank you. And that was it. The room shifted. The balance snapped clean in two. Mom sank back, stunned. Dad covered his eyes with his hand. Emily stared at Brandon as though she didn't recognize him. And Brandon, he slumped into his chair, defeated, drowning in the truth. The performance was over, and I was no longer the quiet one. The silence that followed wasn't calm. It was jagged, raw, slicing through the room. My mother was the first to move. Not to comfort Emily, not to confront Brandon, not to ask if I was okay. No. She pointed a trembling finger at me. Ava, how dare you bring something like this into my home? My home, not our home. I felt the familiar sting, but this time it didn't make me shrink. Mom, I said, are you seriously angry at me instead of the man running a scam under your roof? She threw her hands up in frustration. This was supposed to be a nice dinner, a family dinner. And you always have to make it about yourself. Emily cut in, spinning toward her. Mom, what are you even talking about? Brandon lied to all of us. Mom snapped. Emily, don't raise your voice. Emily broke, her chest heaving. I just found out the man I'm supposed to marry is a criminal, and you're worried about Ava ruining dinner. Brandon slammed his hands onto the table. I'm not a criminal, but even his own voice betrayed doubt. Dad finally spoke, his tone low and trembling. Brandon, son, tell us this isn't true. Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it, like a fish gasping. It's complicated, he whispered. Emily's breath hitched as if someone had stabbed her. Complicated? Her voice cracked. You told me you were trustworthy. You told me we were building a future together. You told me you were a good man. Brandon reached out, but she recoiled. Don't touch me. He tried again, desperate. Em, please. Stop, she screamed. Her voice shook the walls. Mom pressed her hands to her temples. This is a disaster, a complete disaster. Dad murmured, Emily, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. But Emily didn't want apologies. She wanted answers. She turned to me, eyes red, breath uneven. Ava, when did you find out? I hesitated. About a week ago. A week? Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because you wouldn't have believed me, I said softly. You never do. Her face crumpled, and she sank into her chair, knowing I was right. Mom pointed at my phone. Delete those files. Now. I stared at her. Do you hear yourself? No, I said sharply. It stunned her. I'd never said no before. I'm not cleaning up your mess. I'm not protecting your image. I'm protecting my sister. Emily buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Brandon, trembling, grabbed his coat. This is blown out of proportion. We should talk privately. Emily looked at him with pure disgust. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. And you humiliated my sister. Get out. Brandon's jaw clenched, but he obeyed. He didn't slam the door. He just slipped into the cold night. Mom collapsed into a chair, gasping for air. Dad rubbed his forehead. And me. I stood there, hands gripping the back of my chair, letting the weight of it all settle. This family didn't break tonight. It broke years ago. Tonight was just the first time anyone noticed. The house felt colder once Brandon left. Not just because the door opened to the night, but because the truth he dragged into the light refused to leave. Emily sat at the table, still quietly crying. Dad hovered behind her, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space. Mom just stared at the untouched cheesecake, like it had personally betrayed her. Finally, she spoke. Not to Emily, not to Dad, to me. Ava, she said, voice sharp and exhausted, you need to apologize. I blinked. Apologize to who? To Emily, she snapped. For ruining her engagement. Emily jerked upright. Mom, she didn't ruin anything. Brandon did. Mom shook her head, eyes wild with denial. No, Emily. This could have been handled quietly, respectfully. Ava chose to make it a spectacle. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I was stunned. A joke? My voice shook with a rage I'd buried for years. You mean how Brandon spent an hour teasing me while everyone laughed? How you let him degrade me just so you could show off your perfect family with your perfect soon-to-be son-in-law. Mom jumped to her feet, her hands balled tight. You embarrassed us. There it was. The truth behind every moment we'd ever shared. Not you hurt us. Not you frightened us. Not we're scared for Emily. Just you embarrassed us. Emily slapped her palm onto the table. Mom, stop. Ava saved me. She saved me. Mom whipped toward her. Emily, you're emotional. You don't grasp what this means. No, Mom, Emily said, her voice shaking but steady. I finally do. Dad stepped in between them. That's enough. All of you. This is too much. But I wasn't finished. Not anymore. I inhaled deeply. Mom, Dad, I love you. I love this family. But you never protected me. You never stood up for me. You never once tried to see me as more than the role you assigned. Dad dropped his stare. Mom's expression went rigid. You're overreacting. I let out another laugh. Sharper, cutting. Overreacting. Too sensitive. Dramatic. It's the only language you have for me, isn't it? Emily whispered, Ava, please don't go. I looked at her. I'm not leaving you. I never will. But I am leaving this. Mom's voice broke. Leaving what? The facade, I said. The version of this family where nobody is allowed to be real unless it looks good in photos. Dad muttered, Ava, let's just sit down and talk. No. My tone was even now. Calmer than I felt. Calmer than I'd ever been. I spent my whole life shrinking so everyone else could feel bigger. I'm done. Emily stood too, tears streaming. Ava, thank you for everything. I squeezed her hand. I did it because you deserve more. Mom moved closer. Ava, don't you dare walk out that door. But she didn't sound commanding anymore. She sounded scared, because for the first time, she realized I wasn't stuck here. I had stayed by choice, and tonight, I chose differently. I grabbed my coat and pushed the door open. Cold air filled the room. Before leaving, I whispered, I'm not the quiet one anymore. And I stepped out, not slamming the door, not running, not crying, just stepping into a night that, for the first time, felt like mine. In the days that followed, everything fell strangely silent. No messages from Mom, no calls from Dad, not a single one of Emily's endless midnight voice notes. Just silence, the kind that makes you wonder if the entire world is holding its breath. I had braced myself for chaos. I had expected accusations. I thought anyone, would demand an explanation or try to pin the blame on me again. But the fallout came from an unexpected place. 3 days after that dinner, my phone buzzed. Class action lawsuits filed against Prime Ray-X. Then news of an SEC investigation into a potential fraud scheme. I let out a slow, steady breath. Brandon had finally run out of places to hide. 2 days later, Emily appeared at my apartment without warning. No makeup, eyes red and puffy, hands trembling. She didn't speak. She just stepped in and hugged me like she was holding herself together through my arms. I ended it, she whispered into my shoulder. The engagement, all of it. I held her closer. I'm sorry, I said. No, she murmured. I'm sorry for laughing at you, for letting them treat you like that. You didn't deserve any of it. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Something I had waited my whole life to hear. Later that week, a letter arrived from my parents. Cream-colored envelope, gold trim, perfect cursive handwriting. Inside, a single blank card. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what happened. Just an empty card, a perfect reflection of them. I stared at it for a full minute before slipping it into the trash. Not with anger, not with drama, just quietly. Because I finally understood. Sometimes the closure you're waiting for will never come from them. Sometimes closure is simply choosing not to repeat the same story. A month later, I sat alone in a small cafe near the waterfront. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Waves lapped gently against the pier. For the first time in ages, my chest felt light. I hadn't won. I hadn't proven anything. I hadn't fixed my family. But I had done something far more important. I had chosen myself. And I realized something else. Simple, quiet, but powerful. My silence that night wasn't weakness. It had been preparation. And when I finally spoke, it wasn't for revenge. It was for truth. I drew a deep breath, letting it fill my lungs. Brandon was gone. Emily was healing. My parents were probably still pretending everything was fine. And me, I finally had peace. Not the fragile kind patched together with forced smiles and swallowed words, but the real kind. Built on boundaries, honesty, and a little spark of fire. As I watched the waves roll in, I whispered to myself, quiet doesn't mean small. Quiet doesn't mean scared. Sometimes, quiet is the loudest victory. And for the first time in years, that felt true.